Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman in for Richard French, and here we go again. Just 3 months after the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, it has happened again. This time at a high school in Santa Fe, Texas, about 30 miles outside Houston. 10 people are dead, several more are injured, and a suspect, a student, is in custody. From where we go to Chauncey Glover, he is live tonight in Santa Fe, Texas with more. Good evening.
Santa Fe High School is just up this road here. I want to take you right to the scene. You see investigators still there. Police have us about a mile away from that school because they say they found explosives inside the school as well as outside the school. This evening, investigators have been searching the alleged shooter's car as well as 2 other houses for even more explosives. Authorities say the 17-year-old suspect came to school this morning wearing a trench coat. Hidden underneath that coat, a shotgun. Police say he later entered an art class, opening fire. Fear and panic at Santa Fe High School.
They're having a shooting at the high school, have an officer down, shooter not in custody.
The school going on lockdown after reports of shots fired on campus around 8 this morning. Authorities arresting 17-year-old Demetrius Pagortes, now being held on capital murder charges. Students saying they first heard fire alarms, then gunfire.
Everybody just started running outside, and next thing you know, everybody looks, and you hear boom, boom, boom.
We need to do more than just pray for the victims and their families.
Parents waiting anxiously, hoping to find their children.
Finally, they were leading her out of the school. Thank God she's okay.
Authorities confirming at least 10 dead and 10 others injured, but the threat of danger extends beyond the high school.
There have been explosive devices found in the high school and surrounding areas adjacent to the high school.
President Trump addressing the shooting from the White House, vowing to keep students safe.
My administration is determined to do everything in our power to protect our students.
The latest mass shooting comes after the deadly high school shooting in Parkland, Florida. And outrage and frustration over these incidents is growing.
I shouldn't be going through this at my school. Like, this is my daily life. I shouldn't have to feel like that.
Now, detectives on the case tell me both of the guns used in this morning's shooting belong to the suspect's father, who legally owned them. Right now, investigators tell me it's unclear whether or not the father knew his son had the weapons. That's the latest here from Santa Fe this evening. I'm Chauncey Glover, ABC News. Back to you.
All right, Chauncey, thank you very much. Now, after the shooting in Parkland, Florida, there was, of course, lots of talk in Washington about gun control, but as you know, practically nothing has gotten done since. Earlier today, I spoke with Senior Policy Advisor at Giffords, David Chipman, about that and a lot more. Well, David, here we go again. Obviously, the focus today on Santa Fe High School and the emotions of the people there who were impacted by the school shooting. But this, of course, is the kind of thing that impacts everybody across the country. And I'm curious, your emotions and the emotions of people at Giffords who are working to change the gun laws that you believe would prevent incidents like this school shooting today when you see it happening again and again.
Well, this was a gut punch to me personally. Both my kids happen to live in Texas. My daughter is preparing to go to her prom tomorrow night. We just sent out graduation announcements. In Texas, kids go to school a little later in the school year than other parts of the country. So that was the first thing that struck me, is that this should have been the happiest time in a child's life in Santa Fe, and now it's a nightmare. And it's one that was predictable and one that this nation has failed to prevent.
It almost seems like we've reached a point where the best thing for student safety at school right now is summer vacation. I mean, it's the end of the school year means the end of hopefully stories like this. I mean, that's a terrible position to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, when you look at gun violence across our country, still probably the safest place for a child is in their school. We have to remember that, you know, kids are killed every day outside of school. But when it happens in school, it uniquely violates all of us, because we all have memories of what school was like for us as adults. You know, hazing for me as a child, and I'm in my 50s, was a kid who gave me a wedgie. It wasn't someone who was threatening me with pipe bombs or a gun. But that's our children's, you know, reality today. And we've known this specifically since 1999 in Columbine. So this is a generational failure of government to keep our children safe, and we just continue not to do the basic things that could make crimes like this less likely to occur.
And David, before we get into a few of those basic things, you know as well as I do, maybe even better than I do, that people are going to be saying, well, today's not the right day to have that conversation. You know, respect for the people who have lost loved ones in Santa Fe High School. Why is that an incorrect way to view it? Why is today the right day to talk about gun policy?
Yeah, well, that claim is BS. If my child had been killed today, you would have been able to contact me and I would have been sitting in for this interview. Our problem as a country is that we're all predicting that these events won't happen to us. And I guess we're living in a country now where we don't care about other people as much as we used to. I'm absolutely frustrated, but I am steeled with determination that there are things we can do that we are not doing, and every day people are being killed with guns, so every day is a day to talk about gun violence and things we could do to prevent it.
You know, in the past, the president has focused on school safety as opposed to gun policy. School safety and focusing on that, will that ever get us to a place where our kids are actually safe in schools?
I mean, if you believe, or anyone believes, that having armed teachers will repel someone with an assault rifle throwing pipe bombs, you're insane. I think that the question here is, how do we prevent people who shouldn't have these items from ever getting them in the first place? Even after the mass shooting, the worst mass shooting in this nation's history in Las Vegas, where a bump stock was used and everyone agreed that this was an insane product to sell unregulated. We couldn't even get Congress to ban that one item. So it is quite clear that as this administration says that they're doing everything to prevent these things from happening, what they really mean is they're doing everything they're willing to and not go sideways with the NRA and the gun industry.
After Parkland, the president railed against gun-free zones, of which Parkland was one. We don't know if that's the case in Santa Fe, but his claim that gun-free zones make people in schools less safe, how would you respond to that?
I reject the notion of a gun-free zone. The only gun-free zones that I'm aware exist in the United States are the ones when you go through security at the airport, in any federal building that I walk into, in Washington, D.C., and that envelope of protection that I used to provide when I helped Secret Service about VIPs in government. So this notion that gun-free zones exist in our country is ridiculous. And it also is premised on this fact that the best solution to gun violence is somehow winning a gunfight. 20 heavily armed, highly trained police officers were executed with a gun in 2016. And so if we think that the best we can do for this country is make everyone prepared to win a gunfight against weapons of war and pipe bombs, we are missing the mark.
Finally, David, your group, Giffords, has been focused on finding legislative fixes to the gun problems and coming up with legislation that would address the gun issue. We know where Congress is right now, and considering that we're in May of 2018, should we still be focused on legislative fixes, or is it time to shift onto electoral fixes and focus on Election Day as opposed to a bill that probably can't get through Congress anyway?
Yeah, I think there are a combination of things we can do. At the federal level, I agree. We're at the point now where we have to have different leaders in Congress who are willing to take different approaches. But we have to remember, after Parkland, a couple of surprising things did happen. Laws were passed in Florida and Vermont that I would have never predicted would ever be passed in those states. So I think for fellow Texans, one thing they can examine is, why today do they have no minimum age for the possession of a gun? That seems reckless. Why today, when I went on the internet, would I have been able, through a private transaction without a background check, was able to select from over 650 assault weapons for sale in that state? To me, there are things that we can do to make it harder for people to commit these crimes, even in an environment where I'll be the first to say we can't prevent every single one of them.
David Shipman is the Senior Policy Advisor for Giffords, a group that is focused on gun safety and passing new gun laws. David, thank you for a little gun sense on an otherwise and another bewildering day. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
And we'll take a quick break here on RFO. When we come back, we'll pivot to politics and the Russia probe. Each side saying the scandal is worse than Watergate, but for different reasons. We'll explain right after this.